Welcome to this week's episode of Campbell and Jones Meet the Monsters, the podcast where we explore the cinematic legacy of the classic monsters. I'm John Campbell. With me, as always, Brendan Jones.
It's me. Cue the applause. Or you've got a soundboard over there, don't you?
Yes.
Could you do the applause instead of the muted trumpet, which you often do with the wah, wah,
That's really
wah.
become your theme, though, Brendan. I think people expect that.
That's been the theme of my life.
Well, that's your own fault for hiring that guy with the trumpet to follow you around when you go places. It's really on you.
Look, and that was just because the guy wasn't getting any work and was starving to death, and I felt bad.
Yeah, if anything, you're a hero for hiring that man.
I am. But yes, good to see you virtually and talk today about House of Dark Shadows.
Yes, we're still in 1970, and it is the House of Dark Shadows, which I gotta say, before we get into any opinions about the movie itself, kind of refreshing to have a new vampire that's not Dracula. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. And I will say also,
I have affection for, though. I do love me some Barnabas Collins.
Yeah, this is another iconic one. And though, you know, I'm sure some horror nerd would point this out and find the fault in it, Barnabas may be ground zero for the sympathetic vampire character in film and TV and literature, because
that's certainly how I view him.
Yes, because I think even Dracula across the board, with maybe a few blips here and there, was always just straight up villain in the films until later they decided to make him tragically romantic. But I think a lot of that had to do with Barnabas Collins. And that is something that I did find out when trying to track down any information on Dan Curtis and Dark Shadows in preparation for today's podcast. I did find some interviews with Dan Curtis where he talked about the turn into that character and where they found themselves, and
that's a name our listeners should get used to, because I believe this is the first of, I think, 3 Dan Curtis movies we'll be doing this season on Meet the Monsters.
Yeah, or maybe 4.
Dan Curtis. Might be 4. I don't, but I know for sure it's this, and then he has a Dracula and a Frankenstein.
But also Night Stalker.
Oh shit! Yeah, you're right. So yeah, we have more we have 4 Dan Curtis movies. That's right. I always
Dan Curtis is king of 70s horror, and specifically 70s TV horror.
That's exactly what. Yeah.
Which, for our listeners at home who are younger and aren't John,
I might as well be like a 65-year-old man. So
yes,
I don't count as part of the young crowd.
The 1970s was a time when, certainly movies were movies. They were huge, but the TV networks wanted to get in on that action. And it became very important during the summer months, especially when all of the normal shows would be on hiatus. They'd either go into reruns, but during the summer, you'd either see reruns or you'd see original variety shows, which were only done as summer replacements. And you'd also see a lot of TV movies. TV movies were huge in the 1970s, and you'd get big names. You get film actors. You'd also get a lot of actors from the golden age would get work in the TV movies in the 1970s,
Brandon,
which is great.
I've now confirmed it will be 5 Dan Curtis movies we end up talking about. You're forgetting Scream of the Wolf.
How could I forget Scream of the Wolf?
Peter
You're
Graves
absolutely correct.
Scream of the Wolf.
So what? This is sadly for our listeners and you, John. I don't have like any kind of great prepared thing, but I'll give you a little background on Dan Curtis, and it sums up how workmanlike this guy is. He actually reminds me a lot of Gene Roddenberry, except for Gene Roddenberry really was to some degree a visionary.
And also a lot of his stuff didn't go. Dan Curtis's stuff tended to be at least marginally successful.
Yeah, but this is the way the guy got his start. Dan Curtis was working as a salesman for ABC, and he essentially would buy cheap movie packages that could be syndicated and put stuff on, and terrible TV shows like Douglas Fairbanks Jr. Presents and things like that. And
I want to know what Douglas Fairbanks Jr. What he's approving of these days.
Well, not much. He's dead. But
I just love the idea of like that's the most random name. Just like Alfred Hitchcock presents, sure. Douglas Fairbanks Jr. It's just like we need to see what this guy's signing off on.
Yeah, and Dan Curtis himself in these interviews goes, it was all shit. It was all nonsense, and it was terrible. He pitched to his bosses at ABC a golf show, and it was going to be called Challenge Golf, and it actually sounded pretty good. He was going to have like, I don't know, like what, as if I know golfers' names, but a couple of the big names of the period, which would have been the early 60s.
Let's say a Jack Nicklaus and Arnold Palmer.
Let's say those people. But the idea would be he'd have like the pro go up against Jack Nobody. Like they would just agree to have a match against whoever.
That sounds like a good idea for a show.
And he pitched it. They bought it. It never happened. But suddenly they're like, hey, this guy is pretty smart. And then he went into business for himself. He's like, you know what? I could produce TV. And he had a dream. He actually did. He had a dream when he was sort of like flailing as, what am I going to try? He had a dream about a woman on a train going to a town. And this guy himself, Dan Curtis, he came from is it Brookport?
Oh.
It's somewhere in Maine.
Not dissimilar to Collinsport?
Almost exactly. So anyway, he had this vague idea, and he knew, obviously, daytime television, soap operas were very much the rage. Yeah. And he decided that one element that would probably the housewives that watch daytime television would respond to was something like Jane Eyre. And this dream he had was very much like a young, innocent woman going to a dark, mysterious place to start a new job, and there will be mysteries there. He didn't have a story idea. He didn't write Dark Shadows. He just had this dream, told his main writer, and his main writer came up with Collinsport.
Looking over his career, he's kind of a guy who shepherded ideas along more so than he did write some stuff, he did direct some stuff, but he was
mainly a producer.
In the classic TV producer mold.
Right. Yeah. And he was at least very correct in there is a genre tinge that no one is touching. And I love this stuff since I was a kid. I loved horror movies. Yeah. So the Dark Shadows started in 1966, daytime television show, and its ratings weren't great. It was okay. Yeah. And it did feature a character named Victoria Winters, who is a virginal, sweet woman going to start work at the mysterious Collinswood estate in Collinsport for the Collins family, and it's very gothic-y. There are mysteries, and there's blackmail and hidden corridors and all kinds of stuff. It was that, and then it wasn't doing so great. I've
seen some of those early episodes, and
they're fine.
They're okay,
and they are leaning into black and white kind of mystery stuff, but there are a
lot of atmosphere and not a lot of
right. So
when
the
I
ratings
sat
were
down
doing
and it was on Netflix for a while, and I'm like, oh, I love Dark Shadows. I'll start this from the start. And I'm like, hey,
that's always a mistake.
Where's Barnabas?
Right. So at least several months into it, he's like, you know what, I got to try something to boost it. And they brought in a ghost. And the episodes with a ghost, where it wasn't just like somebody's nightmare, but an actual ghost.
Ghost.
Yeah, ghost. Great ratings. And then, great ratings, but still weak. ABC's even going, we're probably going to cancel it. He's like, bring in the vampire. He literally just brought in Barnabas Collins as a last ditch. He's like going, well, if we're going to be canceled, at least I want to bring in a vampire. And he intended to bring in this vampire character, which was an ancestor of the Collins family who gets unleashed. He used a lot of stuff from Dracula. Yeah. He gets let loose from the tomb. He wanted him to come in, be a traditional scary Bela Lugosi character, and be killed, just as a storyline.
Yeah.
But of course, the ratings.
We'll just throw in a vampire. We'll see what happens.
Just throw in a vampire. The ratings were huge. People loved Barnabas Collins.
America fell in love. How could you not?
They fell in love with Jonathan Frid as Barnabas Collins.
Man, he's so good.
I know. And then that's where I bring in this whole thing of that's where he faced the well, we can't get rid of this guy now. And he has been a traditional evil vampire, but if he's going to stick around, we can't have him just being that. So they started bringing in the storylines about his tragic past and the love of his life and the curse that was placed on him. And of course, even the woman scientist of the local town does develop a vampire cure.
Dr. Hoffman.
And all that stuff. Dr. Hoffman. So this becomes, he becomes a weekly character, and they start getting.
He becomes the star of the show.
He becomes the star of the show, and they start going crazier with storylines. They bounce back to the past. There's time travel. There's witches. There's werewolves. Yeah. They go all out on Dark Shadows.
I will say I was a little bit bummed we didn't get any witches or werewolves in this movie.
I thought they were going to do a turn into at least the witch aspect, and they really don't.
I know, and it's a bummer because that's what I love at a certain point.
But I knew that Quentin wasn't in this when I was like, we're not getting the werewolf either, are we? No, Quentin's no.
But I just love that at a certain point it becomes a soap opera almost purely about monsters.
Yeah, exactly. And did I watch this every afternoon when I came home from school? Yes. It had stopped in airing. Now, here's the weird thing about this movie that we're watching today. Mm-hmm. This was, at the height of its popularity. The show started in 1966. Mm-hmm. It ended in 1970 when this movie came out.
Right.
So, and ABC really did kind of cut the show off at its knees. It wasn't done yet. The movie was even successful. This movie we're talking about today was a success because people did love them some Barnabas Collins.
How could you not?
But the movie was a success, and then they wanted to do another movie, but the show had been canceled by that point, and Jonathan Frid said, I think I'd best step away from Barnabas Collins. I don't want to be typecast anymore.
I will say, looking at his career, it's basically the only thing he did.
Well, he did a lot of stage.
Yeah,
but was a Shakespearean guy. But
film and TV, yeah.
Yeah, it is sad.
Very short IMDb that is mostly playing Barnabas Collins.
So, Night of Dark Shadows, which was the second film, doesn't have Barnabas the vampire in it, and was not as big a success.
Because that's kind of the draw.
And that's the end of Dark Shadows until the 90s revival and the Tim Burton movie and all that. But anyway, so that was that's not much about Dan Curtis, but based on the success of Dark Shadows, he then became the horror guy. And he actually loved that. And he was like, great, okay, Dark Shadows wrapped up, but now I'm going to be doing TV movies of Dracula, of Frankenstein. Now I'm going to do... he actually did turn around pretty quickly to do The Night Stalker, based on other source material.
The Night Stalker. We'll get there.
I can't wait. But the thing that cracked me up is watching this one, which we're about to talk about, was a lot of the incidental music. Dan Curtis kept the same guy as like his scorer for like everything. So there were parts of this movie that it's exactly the same incidental music from Night Stalker. Like the little parts with the flute that go boo, 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 to be creepy, and then like ding, ding, ding. All the like spooky music. I'm going, that is exactly the same bit we're going to hear.
You're talking about
Night Stalker.
Bob Cobert.
Sure. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
That's the composer here.
If and
his IMDb page will load. I can.
He does a fine job. It's
all effectively like old school horror kind of sounds.
I will say that the best thing about Dark Shadows, beyond Barnabas Collins, is the theme song. Holy hell, do I love that theme. With the theremin, are you kidding me?
Great stuff.
Ooh.
It's exactly the vibe you want out of this. And yes, you are right, Brendan, that he did do the Night Stalker, the Night Strangler, the Dracula. He did.
He was Dan Curtis's go-to,
but he did go on to do Winds of War, which was also a Dan Curtis production, and War and Remembrance, and such on and so on. And so
actually, in his obituary, Dan Curtis's obituary, they actually mainly were crediting him with Winds of War.
Well, that was the higher class production.
And was huge. It was a huge hit. Herman Wouk's Winds of War.
They're remaking
I remember
it right
my
now,
dad
actually.
watched.
NBC is mounting it again. Yes.
Don't say mounting ever again. All right, let's start talking about.
Well, first we got to talk about this poster.
Oh, we do.
Which is I like that even the IMDb like scan of it is clearly like somebody's copy that was folded.
Yeah.
It's just like that's
Yeah.
all that exists out here. And essentially the idea here is it's a family portrait, right?
Right.
And it's pretty goofy. We have Jonathan Frid in the front here looking very regal. And then most everybody sort of staring at the camera, but as we go back further, we have ghostly.
It's very awkward. It's very awkwardly like it's a Polaroid of his, as you say, the family.
Mm-hmm.
And the farther back you go, people are posing. You've got Carolyn in her vampire state with her flimsy nightgown. She's flapping her wings. You've got, is that supposed to be David shirking away?
Where is David shirking away? I don't see David.
On the right-hand side. Who's that, like, going, vampire?
Oh, that I don't know who that is. That looks like a woman.
I think that's supposed to be David. It does look like a woman, but I
think
of
you're
what
right. I
woman
think it
that
is
would
David, the way as I'm zooming in. I know, I was trying to figure out what woman that was. My favorite, though, is Stokes about to stake Carolyn behind her.
Yeah, from
and then
you have to be a little bit closer than like 4 feet away.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stake you.
And you've got Roger Collins
there.
holding the family archive like, yes.
My favorite thing is our doctor.
Dr. Hoffman.
Holding just like a beaker. Like, hey.
And wearing a white lab coat like, I'm a scientist.
Now this is, all right, I will say this much. If nothing else, they knew who was going to come see this movie, which is fans of the show. Because this is a dumb poster, but what the poster is doing is, it is showing you all of your favorites from the TV show are here. These are all the same actors. There's Joan Bennett as the family matriarch. I mean, these are the same actors from the TV show.
Yeah, and I will say, so fits the movie, which is, if you don't know the show,
you're gonna
have a hard time with this movie.
This stunned me when I was watching. I was like going, this is the least friendly to people who don't know the source material film I think I've ever seen.
Truly,
you would be lost.
Truly, like, really tough to follow. And then you've got, of course,
they don't bother to explain relationships. They don't actually have scenes where characters really talk to each other about their lives. It's just, you're like going, what is, how do they know each other? Why are they in this building? What's going on?
Thankfully, you and I are familiar with this plot and ensemble that I can go, okay, right. But there's also tons of characters who, if they weren't from the show, don't need to be here at all. There's way too many characters in this 95-minute movie where you're trying to condense, like 1,200 episodes of a show.
You know what really cracked me up is, this reminded me a lot of the Twin Peaks pilot when it was released in Europe.
Yeah.
Because the Twin Peaks pilot was being released as a theatrical film in Europe, so they made up an ending. They tacked on an ending to give it a closure, because the Europeans were not going to be watching Twin Peaks. If you have the Blu-ray
set like we do, you can watch that.
You can watch it. And it is weird. And this is the same way, because we get to the end of this and I'm like going, holy hell, they're just killing everybody.
Oh God, yeah, it's a slaughter fest down the stretch of this thing.
Movie is basically, as you just said, a condensation, like in a glass, in a science class when you're learning about how
this was kind of like a sweaty glass.
A sweaty glass of a lot of the main plots, especially Barnabas related plots, over the course of the seasons of the show. And it is, unless you've seen the show, absolutely unintelligible.
Yep. Truly.
Absolutely. And this, it feels like a clip show. It feels like a clip show.
It does. Aside from, Barnabas is the closest character you can actually follow from point A to point B in this thing. Other people,
to some degree.
Yeah, to some degree. Once again, I guess I'm saying that once again because everything is filtered through, well, I do know the plot of the show.
Yeah, exactly.
So, because I'm going like, also Barnabas at least follows but at the time, he was setting that, general vampire structure. So, I take it all back. This movie's impossible to follow if you haven't seen the show. But also, it just is the story of the show if you have seen the show.
Yeah.
It's kind of for no one.
Yeah, that's kind of not the way you want to go.
They might
with
as
it.
well have just put together clips from the show and made a movie. The only
I
thing
can
is,
actually.
it goes further than the show in terms of the bloodshed and stuff in it, which I'm a fan of.
Actually, I was here too, just because the one thing I do like, it sounds a little creepy, but I like when something gets unfettered. When they go, you know what, we don't have to worry about
I
our
agree.
sponsors, we don't have to worry. So sometimes, especially if something is in a horror genre or an action genre or something like that, where it's like, if I just thought of the stupidest example. But the TV show Hunter, which not great. Going back to the 80s.
Brendan, how dare you? I love Sergeant Rick
Okay.
Hunter.
All right.
And
But
his adventures.
Hunter was a Clint Eastwood movie turned into a TV show.
It's just Dirty Harry, the TV show.
It's just Dirty Harry, the TV show.
He's a big guy with a big gun who solves problems by killing people. He wasn't
but if
much
Hunter
of a detective.
But if Hunter had been on the big screen where the show finally ended and they did their big screen movie, same with Miami Vice or something.
I wish.
Heads would be exploding, you'd
well,
have
it
bullets
did
going through people.
when Michael Mann made his Miami Vice movie. It was
right.
There was shit going down in that movie.
Yeah, I mean, broadcast television has
Crockett
limitations.
Getting it on, you saw heads blowing up.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's right.
I want to see Silk Stockings on the big screen. Finally, boobs.
Baby. Actually, the big thing you see now that is a prime example of this is shows that move from network to streaming. This happens.
That's true.
And all of a sudden, the language gets a little harsher, the violence gets a little more, and all of a sudden you go like, oh shit. People can say fuck on Star Trek now.
Yes, if it's a comedy, very often they will at least do a beat where someone does say for the first time shit, and then they'll look and they'll go, what?
Yeah.
Did we just say?
I can't even. We never said that before.
So that is an element here that I actually think works, and they do go all in on, hey man, if we're gonna have blood, let's have some fucking blood in this movie.
And this
goes farther. This goes farther for 1970 than Hammer was at the same time.
It's true.
Pretty intense.
I was thinking about Hammer as I was watching, especially when it started to get more violent. I'm going like, oh shit, we're kind of getting into that territory.
And I'll say this, the makeup effects in this movie are much better than Hammer's.
They definitely are. Yeah.
Which surprised me. I was like, that's really good makeup. I love the bite marks in this movie, and I love the old age makeup. I was like, Jesus Christ.
It looked good. And it looked sufficiently kind of creepy.
Very much
old man Barnabas was a little unnerving to look at.
I know that we've jumped around a lot. We should probably start telling people what this is about.
Quickly run through these taglines, though.
Oh, Christ, John, you with the taglines
because I think there's some good ones here. Number one, so we have two on the poster we're looking at, the one we're looking at, which is, it says at the top, a story of blood relations.
I actually think that's very good.
I like that one. The one I don't like as much is, come see how the vampires do it.
Yeah, that's bullshit.
Yeah, I don't. That's getting a little too tongue-in-cheek there.
And this isn't a sexy movie. I mean,
it's really not. It's fairly chaste.
Yeah.
That they don't lean into, which is interesting because you totally could have. But
yeah, this is actually
wants
more
to see Jonathan Frid getting it on. Let's be honest.
No, it is more about the tragic romance.
It is.
I was supposed to marry my beautiful bride.
Gothic romance is the name of the game here, which I'm on board for. I love a gothic romance.
Me too.
So here we have, and then we have Barnabas Collins, vampire, takes a bride in a bizarre act of ultimate lust, which once again indicating the sexiness isn't here. But how about bloodlust? Fangs bared, the vampire is searching for a mate.
That is, again, so far off.
But is your actually think dating profile, right? That's it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bloodlust!
I love it if the vampire is crossed out and just in crayon is written in Brendan Jones.
Brendan Jones looks for a mate.
Bloodlust, fangs bared, Brendan Jones is searching for a mate. Very true.
Yes.
On all fronts.
So
sorry about the fangs being bared. Sorry about that, everybody.
Let's open things up. We start at Collinwood, which is the central manor here. And we have Maggie, who is the caretaker for young David.
Yes. She's, I guess, the au pair or whatever you would call it.
Right. Now she's different though than the one in the show.
Well, the character switched.
Yes.
Victoria Winters, that actress, she actually didn't make it all the way through the show either. She bailed, I think, after season 2, maybe, or season 1.
When I think of Dark Shadows, I think of Victoria Winters as the au pair.
Right. And people are still mad that she left the show because when the show wrapped up, there was a dangling plot line about her family background that never got resolved. But
fucking nerds.
Oh, come on, she had to be a Collins or something. Come on, that's all it is. Just shut up.
Yeah.
But anyway,
you know how this shit goes. It's all the same thing.
So
basically,
she's
looking
Victoria
around, she can't find little David.
Little David is a fucking pisser in this thing. He's a little asshole.
Yeah,
and is essentially the cause of everything that happens in this movie is him going missing.
Yeah. Don't and then in classic fashion though, because there's so much going on in this movie, effectively disappears in the second half of it. He's hugely important for the first chunk of the movie, and then he's just not in the rest of the movie. I
will say it is pretty creepy that he's the first would-be victim of Lady Vampire Carolyn, because you're like, hey, flimsy nightgown lady, maybe not come on to the 12-year-old boy.
Mm-hmm. I've got boobs, David.
yeah, and then, but after that scene, you're right, he basically disappears.
So she does, says David. She makes some good points. Yes.
Vampirism. Never thought about it before, but it's starting to appeal.
I gotta say, I'm a little too, as we've discussed before, I think I could be suckered into the vampirism. I think I could be pulled in. Because there's a part of me that's like, well, eternal life, especially once the person you love is already the vampire. I'm like, well, if I just still want to be with this lady, even if she's a vampire,
I would totally do the vampirism thing if I knew that I could not kill. Like, if I just had to take some blood from a person.
Well, and it doesn't even have to. Well, also, you could also go the vigilante route and say, I'm going to seek out, pedophiles and rapists and murderers. I'm okay with that.
Man, then
I'm a heroic
You would
vampire.
become Forever Knight.
I do own the complete box set of Forever Knight.
You
Brandon.
do not.
I do. It's on the shelf over there. When this recording's over, I will grab it and show you, because I do own every episode of Forever Knight.
Such a great idea for a show.
Well, come on, Vampire
watch
PI. He wasn't a PI. He was an actual detective. I think he becomes a PI later. But when it started, he was an actual homicide detective.
Yeah, they're like going, how come you never come in during the day shift? We got paperwork we need you to come in and do on the day shift.
Did you watch Moonlight? That was a more recent thing that had the same plot.
No, I didn't.
Moonlight was a CBS show that lasted for one season that was about a private investigator who was a vampire.
Well, you know that my werewolf PI versus vampire serial killer movie was called Moonlight Becomes You. Was the name of that?
I still want that movie to exist.
Any day now.
Yeah.
But
Hollywood, hello. So anyway,
I was out, Hollywood. Did you call?
Yeah. Sorry. Yes, Hollywood? No. Oh.
I was in the shower. Oh no, I missed it.
That's the problem, and they don't leave messages. They just
move
along.
Don't.
If you're not
there,
Hollywood. That's why I take my phone everywhere, including in the shower, because maybe
smart
Hollywood's calling.
Got that waterproof phone case,
and that's why I pick up the phone every time. I go, "Hello, Hollywood." Yes.
No, this is Uber Eats. You were the one who wanted the burrito.
Well, okay, I'll take that. Burrito's good too. Anyway, so she's stumbling around, and this is where we have. Oh, old Willie Loomis stumbling out of the dark and startling her.
Loomis, that name we have, I guess, that's Hitchcock's doing.
Yeah.
That Loomis becomes this ubiquitous horror name thanks to Psycho. Sam Loomis in that. And then, of course, Dr. Loomis in Halloween.
The best. Also named Sam Loomis.
Yes, right. They went with the first name as well, but
so if you watch Halloween, with the context of being like a Hitchcock nerd as well, there's a lot of psycho shit in that movie.
Yeah, very true.
A lot. That's and Carpenter owns that. Yes, this is what's his name here? John Carlin as
John Carlin, who it was so weird because when I as a kid I watched this every afternoon, the reruns of Dark Shadows, and then in the 70s, a very popular television show, Cagney and Lacey. Well, actually, that's early 80s.
80s, yeah.
And he was the husband of Detective. Was it Cagney or Lacey?
That actually is something that.
It doesn't matter.
It is Lacey. He was Lacey.
Lacey.
By the way,
Brandon,
who between us, who do you think's the Cagney and who's the Lacey? Fans want to know.
I think Cagney's the blonde, Sharon Gless, isn't it? She?
Yes, I believe that's right. Once again, I like the show, but I confuse them.
Yeah, no, I watched it all the time, and it was always funny because John Carlin.
Yes,
I think he even won Grammys. Grammys because his amazing vocal performance.
I'm Lacey's husband.
No, I think he won Emmys for his performance as that character because it was a respected dramatic cop show.
Kenny Lacey's pretty good.
It is.
I like it,
and he was very good. He was
it was ahead of its time. It was two ladies.
Like, hey, how you doing? Hey, yeah, you did. He was like the blue collar husband, very likable guy.
He was very good in it.
But yes, he plays the Renfield, the creepy local handyman, who's creepy even before he meets a vampire. And he's basically out to rob the Collins tombs. In this thing, so Willie Loomis, he's just like, "Hey, how you doing there? I saw you came in here."
I mean, his whole vibe in this movie is like, "Pretty lady."
Yeah, and it's all of them. It's like, Carolyn, Miss Carolyn, is you cute?
Look, I'll take any of them. Whoever's
Where's
up
Maggie?
there.
Oh, hey, Maggie.
Whoever's at Collinsport. Whoever's around here at Collinswood Manor. I will be happy to do any one of them.
I will say that
watch.
Subtlety is not Willie Loomis's strong point.
There's not a lot of subtlety in this whole movie, to be honest.
It's very true.
But
very
it is
true.
soap opera. I mean, it is so it makes
they lean into it.
Yeah.
I will give any movie at least one scene where a person shouts another character's name dramatically. I love that. In fact, come on,
it is
Wrath of Khan. Khan.
One of the great moments in film history.
This one does it 4 times.
Yeah.
This one does it 4 times.
Well,
and usually it's Barnabas shouting someone's name.
Yeah.
Carolyn!
And what Loomis is so excited to tell her is, I finally found the clues to the missing family jewels. I know where they are. To which, once again, we're like 2 minutes into this movie. We have a woman we don't know, assuming I'm coming at this from, you haven't seen the show. We have a woman you don't know, looking for presumably a child you don't know.
Yeah, because
we meet a weird guy we have no context for, who's talking about missing jewels, and you're just like, I was watching this the whole time going, okay, if I don't know the show, this is utter nonsense. You're lost from minute 1, and you literally will never click into the plot.
And Maggie goes, okay, Willie, that's great. No, I need to find David. Whatever. And so I don't know anything about that. But he's getting
creepily close to her, going, you gotta look at this. Come here, look at this. But luckily,
I found this in a book.
What saves her, Roger Collins walks in and is like, what's happening in here?
I always like this actor, this Roger Collins guy. He just has a look.
Nothing to do in this movie.
Nothing to do in this movie.
If you haven't seen the show, you have no idea what Roger Collins, which he was kind of an ass on the show.
Well, the whole thing was he was always supposed to be he's the patriarch of the family. He's been up to some financial misdeeds, sexual misdeeds. He's cheated on his wife. This is all soap opera stuff.
Oh, very soap opera.
But in this movie, you get none of that. No, you just see him as this aristocratic guy just going, I don't have time to be with my son. It's up to you to find him, not me.
His big moment in the movie is that he has the book about the history of the family and is able to give information later. That's it.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing Roger contributes to the plot of this film.
Yep.
And, I mean, truly, only about 4 of these characters really matter in the plot of this film.
Yes, absolutely. They're just set dressing for fans of the show that serve no purpose in this world of the movie.
Yeah. So Roger and Maggie continue looking for David.
Actually, Roger doesn't. In that scene, he basically says, "Maggie, it's up to you to find my goddamn son.
Maggie, get back to looking for my kid.
I don't have time for this nonsense
to do. Business. Yeah. This movie does not get into the business of the family at all.
No.
Who could give a shit?
This movie does these crazy jumps where you just like, what? Where's a scene? Where's
Even
a scene
if I didn't know, I would say this is an encapsulation of a long-running TV show.
Exactly. By the time that the local police automatically believe in vampires and are walking around with crosses without the requisite scene of someone saying...
That might be the best jump in the movie, where they're just like, vampires, you say? Break out the crosses, boys.
I do love that. I love it so much.
We're ready to roll.
You see the same thing happen in Night Stalker, but at least in Night Stalker, there's a whole scene about, we don't believe you. That's crazy talk. But just in case.
No, literally, Stokes is just like, it's vampires. They're like, great, vampire protocol, everyone.
It does seem like they have a vampire protocol.
Yeah. Whereas the crosses, another vampire incident? Oh, well, we're ready for it this time.
We haven't had one on the book since 1824, but we'll go ahead and break out the crosses.
Why need a spinoff about Collinsport PD?
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Don't tempt me, because I'll start writing a pilot.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Collinsport PD. So anyway, but we follow Willie away from this, as he apparently his clues have led him towards a crypt labeled Collins on the grounds of this. Seemingly no one has ever looked at, mentioned.
That is exactly the same thought I had. I was like, okay, the bit of doggerel, like the clues to where the jewels might be, is the easiest figured out ever. Mm-hmm. And if anyone was looking for missing Collins jewels, maybe look in a crypt called Collins. This thing is like, they talk about it as if for 200 years no one's known where this stuff is, and he has the clues now. And I'm like going, this would have taken a child 5 minutes.
The clues they're in the crypt.
I bet they're in the crypt. Okay.
So he stumbles down here, because he stumbles in every scene. That's just how Willie moves about.
Yeah, he's possibly drunk in every scene,
or
just so horny he has no.
On the show, I believe he wasn't a drunk, and that was made expressly clear.
Yeah,
I think my memory of Willie, because once again, soap opera, so he had a drinking problem. Here, that's not shown, so he's just weird.
Yeah, he is just weird, and I love the fact that he is acting
with Willie,
like a creepy Renfield before he's a creepy Renfield.
Yeah, I mean it doesn't, and I don't even think it's hypnosis.
I didn't have no choice.
Shit, man,
this is how I was
born. Cool. I'll sign up with Barnabas. Whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm on board for this. Maybe this would get me one of those Collins ladies.
Oh, they're so
or even
pretty.
Shit, I'll settle for Dr. Hoffman.
Yeah, I'll take the older chick too. That's great. You all right, Willie?
Anyway, he comes down here and he's like, "What's this? A coffin covered in chains. Better open her up."
He does, and immediately is strangled by a hand.
Yep.
With a big old ring on it.
Grabs onto him. But we cut away. We don't know what it is. This movie, for having Barnabas Collins front and center in the poster and for being based on a show where Barnabas Collins was essentially the main character at a certain point, really holds on to the secret about who this character might be.
I know. What is the point of this? What is the point?
Because I try to keep my notes like consistent with what the movie's telling me. So at a certain point, I go, mysterious man. I'm not writing Bart, even though I know it's Barnabas Collins.
Of course, everyone knows. There are children born in the womb knowing that this was Barnabas Collins. But
Barnabas Collins. That's who
Barnabas Collins.
That's how my kids will be, because they're gonna know all this shit. My poor.
That's
poor
why my
children.
nephew is. My nephew is insane knowledge of 1970s and 80s character actors.
It's how I was. It's how I was raised. So. And I turned
Broderick Crawford. Wow, Broderick Crawford. I didn't expect you to know who that was.
I mean, I was a little kid going around because my dad did. I would go, James Mason.
There you go.
Yeah.
James Mason.
Yeah.
But this thing too, and I have a feeling this was Dan Curtis's cinematic film directorial debut. This is the first movie he directed. I have a feeling there was a much longer cut, simply because there are scenes in this movie that are cut so abruptly that the soundtrack gets cut off. Like you'll have like you'll have like a da on an organ, like a dramatic scene, and then it just cuts to the interior of another scene. There's no trail off of the music it'll just be a hard cut. You're like, even the soundtrack? What the hell? But anyway, that's what happens here. We don't know who just strangled Willie. I hope he's okay.
Yeah, I am looking through the trivia to see if there's anything about how long, like, because they do mention that there was a preview cut of the movie that had scenes in it, but I can't find like if.
And
if
I do know that the sequel was 24 minutes or something longer. Night of Dark Shadows. It got chopped down, and supposedly it was a much better film in its original version, but got chopped down.
I still can only imagine it was so good, though. Really,
without Barnabas, come on.
Yeah. By the way, this movie cost $750,000.
Yeah. They actually also, some of the blame about the death of the show is tied to the movie, because in order to make the movie, don't forget, this was a soap opera, a daily soap opera, Monday through Friday. So in order to make this movie with the same cast, they had to write their characters out for long stretches so they could go film.
Yeah, so they have that in the Wikipedia I'm looking at here.
Yeah, there's like 20 weeks where Barnabas was trapped in a coffin because he was making the movie, which affected the ratings of the show.
Yeah.
So in a weird way, making the movie, which was a success, may have tanked the show because people are like, where's Maggie? Maggie hasn't been here for a long time.
Was absent from 30 episodes of the show, which is weird because she's not in the movie that much. Oh no! Yes, she is. Sorry, I've mixed up my actors. Never mind.
Did you think that was?
I thought that
Carolyn.
No, I thought that was. Oh, for the love of God! I thought that was Elizabeth. I don't know why I thought that.
No,
I was wrong. I was wrong about that. Forgive
me.
Forgive me, sir.
Catherine Lee Scott was Maggie.
Yes,
and she continues.
She was absent for 30 episodes. Jonathan Frid was absent for 28 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Great, guys. Great stuff.
So not 20 weeks, but yes, 28 episodes, which is still, it's a big chunk of time. If you're like, where's our lead character?
6 weeks of the show.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's just going, hello? Can someone get me out of this coffin, please?
It's still one of my...
Tune in tomorrow to see if Barnabas gets out of the coffin.
Still...
Spoiler, he doesn't.
One of my favorite Superman trivia pits is the creation of... Yeah, the creation of Kryptonite was just so Bud Collyer, the actor on the radio show for Superman, could take a vacation.
For the love of God, man. Like, I can only say this looks like a job for Superman so many times.
Yeah, and they're like, all right, man, we'll write you out for 4 weeks, and Batman and Robin will come in to your show to help you fight the effects of this kryptonite. And they just had an actor in the background every now and then going, as Superman.
I tell you, Robin, Superman looks like he's in bad shape.
I have heard those episodes, but that is, unfortunately, the radio Batman did not sound like Adam West.
No, he didn't, but he should.
He should. All Batmen should sound like Adam West.
Yeah, I know. Christian Bale, come on. I know people mocked him for that raspy voice when he should have been saying, swear to me.
Oh, God. There's got to be a fan edit where someone just dubs over all of Christian Bale's lines.
I don't know if you've seen, and we're totally off track here, but if you've seen the PBS documentary about the history of superheroes, it's really good. But in it, they have people reading sections of comic books, and they have Adam West reading dialogue from The Dark Knight Returns.
Wow.
And it is like that.
Sign me up.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that.
The rain on my chest is like a baptism. This pit's an operating table, and I'm the surgeon, punk.
There's nothing wrong with you, Joker, that I can't fix with my hands.
Yeah, it kind of play. He is trying to bring a little bit more grit to it, but it is still Adam West. The best part of it, though, is they have Alan Moore reading Rorschach dialogue.
Oh, I'm gonna have to check this out almost immediately.
It's well worth it. Obviously,
and for our listeners who don't care about these things,
it was archival audio. He didn't do it for that, obviously.
I have just ordered for myself the complete Batman the TV series box set. So at long last, I will be able to watch all of the Adam West episodes.
I have that, and it is so worth owning.
It's coming. I can't wait.
Oh, it's the best, that show.
Anyway,
back to this, which is not as good as
not
the
as
Batman
good.
show.
No.
So anyway, we have Maggie still searching for David when David leaps out at her in a dark cloak and locks her in a room because fucking David in this movie.
David's a fucking punk.
I can't stand David here.
Me either.
But of course, you also have a cat scare before this.
You have a goddamn cat scare.
Meow! Oh, never mind. It was a cat.
It's just a kitty.
To which I'm just like, oh, God, every time I see that in anything. Come on. It probably wasn't complete hack at this time, but it was about to be.
Dude, it was old in the general.
Come on, Buster Keaton. You're better than this.
Really, Buster? A cat scare? Cheap. I don't know. I couldn't think of anything else to put in here.
Cheap, my friend.
But
anyway,
yeah, so
she's still searching for David, and so then she's locked in here, and she spends conservatively, I don't know, 15 minutes going, David, come on, let me out of here. Let me out of here. Please, won't you let me out of here?
It's just bad pacing.
Yeah.
And like that's a dumb way to get the story off and running.
So meanwhile, we have Daphne. She's closing up shop for the night at Collins Port or Collins. For some reason I always want to say Collins Port. Collinwood. Collinwood is the estate. Collins Port is the town. Although we basically never leave Collinwood.
Not often, no.
In this. Particularly in this movie, we're pretty much bound to this. Except we do go to a restaurant a couple times. That's about it, though.
I think the sets are very nice. That's a nice manor house. Yeah, it looks good.
Yeah, it's all... I mean, I think the movie in general looks fine. It definitely looks like a lower budgeted film of the era.
Yeah, I'd say it stands shoulder to shoulder with Hammer, and in some places...
It's better.
Is better.
Yeah.
But man, as far as storytelling here, oof.
Yeah, oof, I'm a goof indeed.
I was like, I'm sorry, was John Elder not available to do a pass of the script?
No, I passed on it, my friend. I passed.
The Americans, the Yanks, their idea of horror, I just don't
But Jimmy Sangster had some pitches for it.
I'm sure he did.
I'm telling you, this is the show I should be writing for!
Maggie Evans, and then Victoria Winters engaged in a very deep lesbian kiss.
I do see that Carolyn is in a nightgown in this, but I'll just say this. My one note, could be gauzier. Could be gauzier.
will be on my tombstone.
I did tell you, I have not read them yet, but I recently did download several Jimmy Sangster novels to my Kindle that I intend to read, so...
Let me know.
I'm very because he wrote a lot of sort of pulpy crime and detective stuff in that era, which I'm very excited to read.
You love that stuff.
He's got like a two-fisted PI character and like an international James Bondian sort of character. So
perfect.
Yeah, which I'm just like on board. I mean, number one, I love Sangster, and those are my genres. So perfect.
I will
report back about how those are.
It sounds like a fun weekend for you, my friend.
Yeah, a fun, lonely weekend with my Jimmy Sangster pulps.
And your cat.
And my cat, who's named after a famous detective.
Yes, you and Poirot will enjoy.
Ooh, you know what? Maybe I need to get a second cat and name him Poirot.
And Marple.
No, let's be honest. The second cat would be named Rockford.
Yes, of course
Columbo
it would. Columbo and Rockford. That would be the best.
Yeah, okay. Now I do need to adopt a second cat just to make that happen. Oh, this place is going to be lousy with cats. It'll just be the cat's apartment and I'll live here. Anyway, I'm slowly turning into Marin. Anyway.
It's okay.
Who are you guys?
Here's an update on Columbo's health.
Yeah.
And he's doing okay.
Hey, Barnabas Collins. Who are you guys?
Who are you guys?
Who are the vampires you really looked up to? I have to say, I was always a fan of Dracula. No,
it may be cliche, but Dracula's my number one guy.
He really was the best. Anyway, we have to get through this movie.
We do.
It's going to be a 4-hour episode. So Daphne's going home for the night, and what's this? Someone's following her. It's a mysterious figure. Could be anyone. I don't know.
All right. This is a little road in a small town in Maine, and they have fucking wolf howls in the background. And like jungle bird sounds.
Maine,
and
lousy with wolves.
She's looking around. She says, "Oh no!" And she starts running, and she drops her purse and her coat, and just starts taking off.
And she gets in the car. But what's this? He's already in the car. Whoever this is.
Yes, this is more like we see arms and hands and POV, and that's how again they keep teasing out Barnabas Collins.
Yeah,
and just like the show. Here, he's not starting out. I mean, obviously, he hasn't said a word yet, but he's not your forlorn vampire. Here, he's just on the hunt. Like he's just like, I don't care who this is.
I will say this. This is my note as a Dark Shadows fan. I don't like that Barnabas is kind of a straight villain in this movie.
Yeah,
they touch on the tragic stuff, but by the end of it, he's just a full-on evil dude, and that was never what he was on the show. He was complicated. He was an anti-hero, though.
Yeah.
Here, I'm like, oh, hashtag not my Barnabas.
Oh, man.
And you would think I was talking about Johnny Depp, but no, I'm not.
Listeners, we need to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, is this your Barnabas? Come on.
Let's get this trending, all right? Yeah. Get these hashtags trending, not my Barnabas.
Oh, this is a movie. They need to make him a villain, but come on. Barnabas was the best character in the show. Let's not...
Again, by the end of this thing, they have essentially wiped out almost the entire cast.
Which I also thought was strange.
They basically said, let's just do a Dark Shadows movie that wraps everything up. Yeah. And they kind of do. With one of the worst...
But also they kind of shit on the show by doing that, too.
Yes, and then also one of the worst openings for a sequel I've ever seen. In the last second of the film.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're not there yet.
So yes, then I believe it's Todd that it's
Todd.
Yeah, it is.
They get confusing as far as the boyfriends.
Todd and Jeff might as well be the same person.
Yes, Todd and Jeff.
Yeah, Todd.
One's and Jeff. Maggie's boyfriend, and one of them's Carolyn's.
He says, "You go, girlfriend, Maggie."
Actually, that would have been very progressive. But
yeah, if one of these guys was just effeminately homosexual, then I would really be able to tell them apart.
They're both guys, and they're both
just men.
Yeah, they're both men.
How are you
doing?
One
cares for Maggie. One cares for Carolyn.
That's right. I'm a man, baby.
And no one cares for poor Elizabeth. She's so old.
Disgusting.
Washed up.
Disgusting.
Or the doctor.
That voice.
Dr. Hoffman.
That voice is what you hear is the masculinity trying to escape. It's so much.
So, yeah.
So,
Daphne is
Todd
is she
finds
dead?
her.
Or is she just bitten?
She's bitten. No, she's not dead because then we cut to. Oh, wait a minute. No, I think she is dead. Hold on here. There's a lot of characters in my notes here.
It's true.
Man finds her with bite marks. Then David sneaks about. Elizabeth is really worried about David, but Roger's like, oh, they'll find him.
Yeah, of course, we're cutting across a lot of storylines. So when we cut back to the manor house, David, we finally see him. He's 12-year-old David.
Yeah.
He's just like puckishly listening at the door while they go, well, I hope he's not dead. Or Maggie. We haven't seen either of them in hours.
It's Elizabeth going like, I'm just so worried. And Roger, who is actually the boy's father, going, who gives a shit? He'll turn up.
That's basically it. Now, Elizabeth is played by venerable actress Joan Bennett, who was a big draw for the show as well because she was an A-list star back in the 40s and 50s.
Here where it's like, and Joan Bennett as Elizabeth Collins Stoddard.
Right. So,
and great.
And
love it, man. But there's a part of me that also
plays
a
matriarch.
I mean, I do know she was a big deal, but also when I saw that come up, I'm like, well, yeah, she was on the show. Of course she's in this and playing that character. But also, she's not in this movie very much at all.
No. She shows up every now and then to kind of fret, but that's about it.
But I just, like I said, it behooves you to know the show, but it also frustrates you if you know the show. To be like,
right.
Why aren't we, I don't understand. Why aren't we leaning into that part of it?
You asked for too much.
Did you ever read the comic that Dynamite did, Dark Shadows Year One?
No. However,
I have not either. I thought the art looked all right.
As a kid in the 70s, did have, and I don't know how I ended up with, but several issues of the Gold Key.
Oh, nice. Gold Key.
1970s Dark Shadows comic. And I still remember one issue that dealt with Dr. Hoffman and the vampire cure. I still remember the art and the storyline.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I love the Gold Key Star Trek book for how way off it is.
Yeah.
It is like Spock's green in it and stuff like that.
Has like brown hair.
Yeah, everything's just wrong. All the models are off, and the stories have nothing to do with Star Trek. It's fascinating.
That's why they're the best.
Finally, getting away from that show. Anyway, Jeff saves Maggie from the locked room.
Yep.
And we cut to the sheriff going, well, I don't know what happened here. He with the bites on Daphne's neck, I've never seen anything quite like it. How's she doing, Dr. Hoffman? And this is where we meet Dr. Hoffman.
I do love that the intro to that scene is essentially one of the most classic types of vampire movie lines, which like they almost look like human bites, don't they?
Yeah, they're like, yeah, but that wouldn't be.
Yeah, but that's impossible. Moving on. It's like, well, a human couldn't puncture.
Dr. Hoffman is saying she'll be okay if we just continue to transfuse the blood, and she'll be all right.
She'll be all right.
She'll be fine.
She'll be fine.
This is our introduction to Dr. Hoffman, who will be an important character here.
She is a middle-aged scientist who lives in Collinswood.
No, because she says she'll stay the night here to keep an eye on Daphne.
That's right.
But then it does appear later in the movie she is just straight up living there. And in fact,
that lab she has looks like it's in the mansion.
And then is actively packing her bags to leave later in the movie. So
Right.
Also, she's not a hideous woman. I think Barnabas is a little, dismissive of her.
Well, again, back to... I
say get with the vampire scientist woman.
I do think that, that's a storyline from the show.
God,
These are all just storylines from the show.
She's curing Barnabas, but also falling in love with him.
I do think that scene is handled well just because both actors are good. And Jonathan Frid does very well with like, oh, I just realized you care for me. Because he's, it's the classic thing of like, thanks to you, I'm going to be able to marry Maggie. And then she's like, oh
no. Oh,
and
you thought,
like,
oh, no. You know what? That's my fault.
Awkward.
I may have been giving some mixed signals.
Awkward.
But look, I love you as a friend.
When I said that dress looked good on you, it did not mean that I wanted to marry you.
I think... Yeah. There's got to be a Todd or a Jeff or someone like that for you, Dr. Hoffman. Anyway.
There's got to be a Todd or a Jeff.
In fact,
there's always a Todd or a Jeff.
I'm taking Jeff's girl, so maybe get on in there.
I know, man.
Dr. Hoffman. Yeah, he is just like, and fuck
pretty
Jeff.
Blunt.
Fuck Jeff. Who cares?
Everything in this movie, like I said, these hops where it's like we don't see the intervening things. Well, it's like we never see Maggie go, I'm torn between these two people. No, like I'm just so happy to be with you, Barnabas.
With Barnabas,
suddenly,
very romantic.
Yeah, and suddenly it's all about them. What?
So he's stymied, and then they go, oh, we found another body in town that had bite marks on the neck. Do you think that has anything to do with this? I don't know, maybe. Whatever. Meanwhile, Carolyn is out in town, and she sees Willie at the pub, and she's like, oh, wait, that's Willie. He just disappeared from working for us and hasn't even shown up to pick up his final paycheck. That's weird. Oh, hello, Willie. And Willie's like,
is weird.
Oh, jeez.
Willie's caught, and what he's doing is he keeps moving his body to block view of the corner booth that he was sitting at.
A mysterious man. Who could
Because he was having dinner with a mysterious man. So Carolyn can only see the hand of his dinner guest, which has a big old ring on it.
Big old signet ring.
Bum, bum.
And he's going, well, I just got this sudden offer and
new job.
I had to go very quickly, and I'm sorry I couldn't say goodbye.
You're awful attractive.
Oh, God.
By the way.
Yes, I am staring at your chest. Oh, God.
Maybe you should go.
Oh, God. I'm so drunk and or horny. I don't know which way to play it.
I do think,
pardon
he's
my
a
erection.
good actor. He became a very good actor.
He's in a lot of other stuff, but it's underwritten and there's not much to play. It's pretty one note.
Oh my God! And that note
is bad.
We want you to be as creepy and drunk as possible. That's
God.
It.
Oh Jesus! Hang on, it's coming back up on me. Oh God.
You can keep the paycheck. Do you have any Tums?
So anyway, we then cut to from the POV of this mysterious man as he knocks on the door to Collinwood.
I loved watching this.
They're really hiding the identity.
I know. You're seeing a lot of the things that Dan Curtis will use much better in The Night Stalker because these POV shots of our vampires, they're going,
but the
get
vampire
ready for Janos Skorzeny
is mysterious in Night Stalker.
Never says a fucking word, which is actually one of the problems I have with it. But
meanwhile, following this mysterious, like, oh, it's just this guy.
It's just this guy who is our mysterious British cousin Barnabas.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. He shows up and he's like, yes, I am the Collins cousin from England. And
they're like, wow, we didn't even know we had a cousin in England.
That's right. And they're like, well, it's uncanny. You look exactly like the portrait of the man who founded this town, Barnabas Collins. He's like, yeah, just one of those things.
He's like, really? You think? Maybe maybe around the eyes.
A little bit, I guess.
He looks exactly the same and is wearing almost exactly the same costume.
Guess I kind of see it.
Oh, yes. The same sort of Roman haircut with the...
I suppose there's a similar devilish handsomeness if you were to really look for it. But here he goes. Also, look, I've got the family jewels.
Well, it's weird. It's both funny and weird that everyone in the Collins family is automatically, due to this movie, just like, we have to throw this stuff in. They're all automatically like, well, do you know these people live over there? Everyone's immediately suspicious. And then his only way of diverting it is like, here's the quickest way I can prove who I am or that I'm a relative. Is he goes, the family jewels. Yeah. He just pulls them out, and I'd really like you to have them.
Oh yes, do I know the barristers? Yes. How about these family jewels?
Yeah, this necklace, which I should give to you, cousin Elizabeth. And she's like, oh my God, they're beautiful, and they're right there in that painting, and we thought they were missing for hundreds of years.
Yes. Hooray for me! And he goes, well, you know what? I can do. Take up residence in the old house on these grounds.
Yes.
And they're like, really? It's pretty messed up over there. He's like, well, I'll fix it up.
Yeah.
They're like,
And the rest of this movie, it becomes this weird DIY kind of, almost like a This Old House episode of you literally see Barnabas Collins.
He
does
Bob
a lot
Vila.
of sheetrock.
It is Bob Vila, and it's just like, and they're measuring shit and sawing wood, and it's like,
When they put those sconces in, I was blown away. That really did bring the room to life.
It's such a homey feeling in there. Now, what can we do about my coffin room? So drab.
You ever think about some hidden track lighting? Oh, yes.
That's exactly what it needs. So Carolyn comes over looking for Barnabas in the old house where he's just immediately taken up residence because we're at lightning pace in this movie.
Yeah, and not explaining a damn thing.
And
or
Willie's
giving
there
to, react.
Willie answers the door, and Carolyn's like, "Oh, this is the job you took? You're working for Barnabas?" He's like, "Yes, but he's not here, so you should probably be going right about now." And it's just like, "Yes, you really do need to go. It's really nothing for you to see." And she's like, "Oh, look at what you've already done with the place. You're Really, you really are fixing it up. He's like, yes, no, it's beautiful, but like I said, super busy around here, so maybe you just leave? I don't know.
He is.
You gotta go, Carolyn!
He's very subtle.
But of course, we transition and see that Barnabas is asleep in the coffin in the basement.
Yep.
Because he's a vampire.
Whoa, hold on. Did I miss that part?
Yeah, he's a vampire.
Shit. Well, that explains a lot of what happens later.
Well, what happens in this very next scene, because Carolyn goes, oh, gee, I have a few questions about where you came from and what you're doing, and he's just like, and then Barnabas does show up. He goes, well, I'd be happy to answer them if you just follow me in here, and I bite you.
It is an instantaneous a chomp.
Yeah, a chompa. He gets a piece of Carolyn here. And then we just once again we cut to it's a costume party at Collinwood.
Well, to welcome their British cousin, they decide to do some colonial themed Collins party. And you have one of the guests going, well, with all the deaths and weird bitings in the town that have been happening lately, I didn't think that I would come out. But you have to do it if it's a Collins party. And they're like, oh, that's wonderful. And so everyone's in colonial garb, which allows Barnabas to show up looking exactly like the portrait.
Yep.
Oh, it's great.
And he's here for but a minute before he seizes upon Maggie and says, What? Why, who's that?
Because she looks exactly like his long-lost Josette.
Josette, it's her, and she's
I
actually in Josette's dress.
Yes, and I do love the soap opera-ness of this because he sees Maggie and goes, "Oh my God!" Meanwhile, Carolyn, who is on the way to being turned, she's in her little colonial garb, and she has the scarf wrapped around her neck so no one sees her naughty bite marks. Mm-hmm. And she sees Barnabas's look to Maggie, and Carolyn's like going, oh, she's jealous.
Yeah, that is my man.
That's my man who just drained some of my blood. Mm-hmm. So it's on like Ray Don Chong. It is on like Ray Don Chong.
And so he goes, that, because he goes over to Maggie, he says, that dress belonged to Josette, the much beloved but very dead fiance of Barnabas Collins. And in fact, you look just like her.
And she goes, yeah, great. Anyway, so...
Well, she's going, well, my time here is over now. This is the last night I'll be here. He goes, no! You must stay. David needs you. Roger says he wanted you here. Elizabeth needs you, and I
gotta say, this is creepy because it is like Jonathan Frid has joined my Zoom chat.
I'm telling you, though, I am only slightly overdoing it from what it actually is.
Jonathan Frid is great. Jonathan Frid does walk a line, and understandably so, because he had been doing this character every day for 2 years, 2.5 years, whatever, by this point. So it is one step over the line. It is one step over into hammy soap opera.
One step over the line.
Sweet Barnabas. Yeah. And it really goes over the line when he's doing those shouting things later in the movie. Which I love. Yeah. Actually, I do like a sense of melodrama occasionally.
Well, it's built for this, though. I mean, this whole thing is built for melodrama. I think sometimes it goes over the line here, but most of the time, I like where it's pitched.
Mainly, it's wrong because we don't see how to get to those. They've cut out the middle steps.
They don't earn any of the drama because you can't. This movie is just launching.
It's a clip show. Yeah.
Yeah. So he says you must stay. And then she goes, well, I do have to say, I do feel a familiarity with you. And here's the thing that they don't get. Is she actually the reincarnated Josette? The movie doesn't land on it. It seems like she kind of is.
Well, when she's kind of under his hypnotic control at the end, it does seem like she's like going, yeah, but she's not really saying anything in that scene. But she is responding to Josette, and I think they are implying. Yeah, she is.
And so then he's talking to Willie later, and he's got this music box, which would be important. But he's also speaking to the music
really
box
not
going...
that important. But they show it to you a million times.
Yeah. And it's only important that he gives it to Maggie later.
Right.
But he's looking at the music box and he's going, Josette, you have come back to me.
Yeah.
And then he's talking to Will and he goes, oh, I love Josette, but this terrible curse that was put upon me, which is not explained, the backstory of, and does play into the Angelique Witch thing, I believe.
Yeah. Well, it's another jealousy thing. It's like he wanted to be with Josette. They were engaged to be married.
Angelique was a witch who he had a dalliance with or something, right?
Yeah. And so I think Angelique
cursed him to be a vampire.
Right. And Josette kills herself, I think.
Throws herself off a cliff, which is said here.
And then and then I think
tried to throw himself off a cliff but didn't die because he was a vampire.
Right, and the family, keeping the secret, they know what he is.
They locked him. They chained him in the coffin.
Chained him in the coffin.
For his own good, where he was meant to stay for an eternity, but now he's out. Anyway, Carolyn storms in.
Anyway.
I mean, this whole movie is anyway.
It is
true. Carolyn storms in and goes, so it's Maggie you want. Well, I'll put a stake in that, if you will. I'm going to tell her what you are. Tell her about you being a vampire and your vampire and all that deeds. Stuff. And he's like, and Barnabas just like, well, we can't fucking have that, can we? And so he attacks her.
And he finishes her off this time.
Yes, he finishes her off. And he's like, Willie, get rid of her, please. No, he doesn't finish her off. Willie pulls her off, and Willie's like, you gotta get him out. You gotta get out of here. He's really gonna kill you if you're not careful here. And he goes, you really gotta leave Barnabas.
Well, I mean, he did finish her off, but she's still kind of alive and very bloody from the wound. And Willie takes her almost to the house and then goes, I can't go in there. I can't go in there. So you got to finish the rest of the way. And so it's a pretty good scene. She does make it in the house, but then. Is it Elizabeth or somebody in the house comes downstairs and sees that she's just
a random servant. It's not one of the characters. It's just a woman carrying a tray. And it's like,
yeah, that's right.
And then
it's the maid that we see a couple of times.
We cut to Carolyn's funeral.
Oh, it's sad.
It's so sad. Whatever. Meanwhile, Hoffman's examining blood samples, and she's talking to Stokes, who's like, there's these suspicious cells I found in the bite marks of all the victims. And Stokes is like, yes. Because it's a vampire!
Stokes is a local professor?
Yeah, he's our Van Helsing.
Yeah, and Hoffman is a doctor.
Yeah.
And so he basically does say to a scientist, it's probably vampires. And people would think I was crazy.
Yeah.
And Hoffman goes, well, yeah, that's insane. And I've heard the folklore about vampires.
Obviously, that's insane. But based on these cells, it's obviously some sort of virus that can be cured.
But then it's within 2 minutes. She goes, well, let's say it's vampires.
Yeah, but even if it is vampires, it's got to be a medical condition, right?
It's just so quickly done. It's hilarious.
And Stokes is just like, this is no virus. They are the undead.
Yeah.
And it's just like, yeah, but I'm still going to try to cure it because I'm a doctor.
And that's what I do, god damn it. Right. And I was shocked at that language. I was like, what?
I couldn't believe it. So we cut over to David, and he's playing in the dilapidated old grounds.
Yes.
And
this is a weird scene. It's supposed to be all like trippy because he's down in an empty pool. I think an empty pool.
Yeah.
And he's got a tennis ball, and he's doing this thing. We hear his voice echoing, and it's really weird. It's like, if I catch this, she's not really dead.
Yeah.
If I catch this one, Carolyn's not really dead.
And then he trips and falls and is knocked unconscious.
Something.
But then he hears up.
And he hears Carolyn going, don't be afraid, David.
I'll give it over last week's movie. She doesn't just go, David.
It's true.
David.
There's actually dialogue instead of just his name over and over again. And he's like, Carolyn? Is it really you? And she shows up in her flimsy nightgown, which I guess she was buried in a flimsy nightgown.
I suppose so. She beckons him.
Beckons him over.
To come near. And then he gets creeped out the closer he gets. And he's like, no, Now stay away from me. And runs off. And it's just like...
Yeah, he does not get bitten.
Yeah. And so then David runs into the family who's all sitting around the dinner table. And he's like, I saw Carolyn. She's not dead. I saw her. And everybody's like, oh boy. Except for Stokes, who's like, the boy is right. It's a vampire. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Stokes, did I say that too loud?
He is not afraid to toss his crackpot theory around.
Vampire!
Usually with Van Helsing types, they're like, look, I understand that the world believes this. Yes. This guy is just like going, it's totally a vampire.
I wanted Matt Berry in this part. I'm not going to lie.
It would be great.
Vampire!
Oh, God.
That's
the twist
what we're dealing with here.
The twist at the end where he's a vampire, which we all saw coming, is pretty awesome and would be that much better with Matt Berry.
He would have lunged him and went, I'll bite you.
Ha ha!
Yeah,
didn't see that coming, didn't you?
Oh, yes. Matt Berry needs to be in everything. The man's a genius.
He is a genius.
Genius.
And I would cast him in anything.
Yep. Come on, where's his role in the MCU? That's all I'm saying. I'm saying. He works with Taika. It could happen.
Yeah. Dude, if he makes his Flash Gordon and
Gordon's
Matt
alive.
He needs to be Zoltan of the Hawkmen. Or Voltan. Sorry, Voltan of the Hawkmen.
Because he could crush. Gordon's alive.
Yes. It's like, today is a good day to die.
He's got the same tone.
Dive, my Hawkman, dive!
Yeah, he kind of fits it physically. He's a beefier gentleman.
He's getting beefier every year.
That's what I hear. I hear that's the goal. Beefier this year than last.
Yeah. The name of his not very successful self-help book. Which is just all about, you know what's good for a dessert? 2 milkshakes.
Cake! Anyway, more cake, please. That was the sequel.
More cake this year than last.
So Stokes goes, yes, it's a vampire, and he's talking about vampires, and he goes, you, Todd, you're in particular danger because you were her intended.
Yeah. Carolyn will be coming for you.
She's gonna come after you, because I do like everyone's in danger. Particularly you, Todd. You're fucked, buddy.
I want to be perfectly clear. You're practically already drained.
Yeah. Well, in fact, in the very next scene, Carolyn shows up while Todd's in bed, and she bites him. So,
yeah, that is some very, very efficient storytelling.
I mean, not a lot of fat in this movie. I'll give him that.
No.
Also, but we also lost a lot of the meat when we were cutting off the fat, too. Oh, Jesus. So anyway, then Dr. Hoffman's treating him the next morning, and they're like, oh, yeah, he'll be all right as long as he doesn't... as long as she doesn't bite him again, he should be fine. And
next scene, she's biting him again.
Ah, damn it. No, the next scene is Barnabas going, Jesus, Carolyn, have some fucking self-restraint and leave Todd alone.
I do always kind of like scenes of an elder vampire going, young vampire, listen to me. You're playing it stupid, young vampire.
I know what your instinct is, but come on. You're going to get
maybe veer away from the loved ones and the family.
It's going to be bad for us all. It's what they expect, and we just...
It's what they're expecting.
Yeah, come on. Come on.
Come on.
Will Arnett is a vampire. I'd like to see that.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
We're just making better movies constantly.
We just cast comedians we love and stuff and go like, that'd be better.
That'd be instantly better.
Yeah. Where's he in the MCU, by the way? Get Will Arnett in there. Damn it.
Well, no, Warner Brothers owns him thanks to the Lego movies.
He is Batman, so he's a great
In
Batman.
fact, now he's got a Lego game show that he's a host of.
Yeah, Lego Building Masters. I have not watched it, but
me either.
Seems fun. And that's easy money for him.
Oh my God, he's taking home a little check.
Yeah, not bad. You can continue hanging out with Bateman and Sean Hayes and do their...
Yeah, because they're not making a lot of money off the muffler people or whoever their sponsors are.
They have the most random sponsors of any podcast, I think.
It is. I think it is just like an auto
Sean
part
Hayes
supplies.
reading auto part
Yeah.
things. You're just like, oh, Sean Hayes doesn't give a shit about cars.
And apparently you can get an alternator there. I'm not sure what that is.
Yeah.
But you can get one there.
I'm not sure any of those guys. None of them seem like car types.
No, and they make fun of that all the time.
They do, yeah. Yeah, they do a lot. Anyway, great podcast. Check that one out.
Yeah,
When you're
and
done
imagine a
listening to ours.
podcast that has sponsorships where money comes in. I'm thinking of that.
We've been
right
told
now.
time and time again, too nerdy for sponsors, this show.
Wow.
Too nerdy for sponsorship.
I'll take that as a badge of pride.
Yeah.
And take that to the bank, which will get me absolutely nothing.
And then I like Barnabas goes, Willie, make sure she stays in this room. And I just thought, what the fuck is Willie gonna do, Barnabas?
I know.
He's gonna restrain this vampire?
That he already has this, well, because she's a female, but already has this sort of weakness towards. All she has to do is like go, come on, Willie. Okay, well, I won't. Just don't tell Barnabas I did it.
I'll show you my boob, Willie. But just one.
Just the one.
It's
You
better
get half
than nothing.
now, half when it's done.
I'll take it. Anyway, he's easy to get back.
He is. So leaving.
Barnabas goes over to Collinwood, the main house, and it's just a pointless, like, nothing scene. It's only here so that Hoffman can see a reflection in a mirror, and that Barnabas has no reflection. She's like,
yeah.
Might he be the vampire?
She doesn't really freak out too much either. She's like, I'm taking this into consideration.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a distinct And also the only other reason this is here is so that Barnabas can come back to his house and find Willie bitten and Carolyn gone.
Yep.
And he's
she
like,
got away.
Oh, shit.
And then it's Barnabas going, where would she have gone?
Where that would be. Meanwhile, they have Todd under police guard.
This cracked me up. All right, so the police at this point are already
what are these
like,
police gonna do?
they're already entertaining. Yeah, this is a vampire, or whoever's doing the biting is going to show up. They're convinced of this, but they have one guy on the night watch, and he's just sitting there reading a book, and you're like going, maybe have more than one person, one guy outside the door, maybe.
Who needs it?
That's it.
Who needs
That's it.
Yeah. She sneaks in, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And when she sneaks in, no, she doesn't sneak in. I'm sorry. Todd knocks this guy out because he wants to be with Carolyn.
Right.
And
right.
he sneaks out.
Sneaks out and joins her in with the attic or the old house or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And then some more cops arrive. And they're searching upstairs in the attic. And, of course, they come upon Carolyn just guzzling from a Todd juice box.
Mm.
And they're like,
see, again,
vampire!
This movie is not good. But this is refreshing.
I like
if
this
you were a
scene.
fan of the show, you're like, we are all in. Because the bloodletting and the drinking of the blood and the blood itself is good looking and there's plenty of it.
Yeah. I do. I also like the scene where they're like, there she is. All right, boys, move in on her. And all the cops pull out these big crosses and corner her.
Hilarious.
They like enclose her in. That's it.
Yes.
Hold her down. And then Stokes comes in and stakes her. Stakes are good, too. Damn.
Stakes are real good.
I love a good staking, man. I love a vampire
This one
staking.
is...
This is
one's
solid,
very
and
good.
the blood's pouring out. It's spraying up at Stokes. I'm like, yeah, more, please. And they do deliver on a lot more of this. Please,
They
sir,
do.
May I have some more gore?
Okay.
Yeah. Loves me some gore, man. I don't know. I don't know what it is about me. I'm not
Well,
a violent
I
person,
like it.
but
I like it when it's, if you're thinking, I was about to say, if you're taking this stuff realistically, which of course it's a vampire movie, you can't be taking it realistically.
much like the real vampires, yeah.
It's the same with like a werewolf film where that was one of the things that Universal film is very atmospheric. And you're like going, but a werewolf isn't even just biting people on the neck. A werewolf has claws and basically disembowels people and eats flesh and does all that stuff. and leaves skeleton and blood behind.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you need to see it, or you don't need to spend a lot of time on it, but you can't dance around. Yeah, you can't dance around the fact that these aren't bloodless kills. A vampire drains you of blood.
Right.
By biting into your carotid artery. Come on, people.
So they've got her now. She's been staked, and she's at peace.
Yep.
Meanwhile, Hoffman goes over to Barnabas. Meanwhile, I mean, this whole movie is just meanwhile. Then, in place of that, here's this. Hoffman goes over to Barnabas's house and is like, "Look, I know you're a vampire." He's like, "What? Such a preposterous suggestion." What? And then she pulls out a cross, and he, of course, immediately is like, "Get that out of here!"
He goes, "Okay."
Damn it, all right. And she goes, "Look, I know you're a vampire, but hey, I can cure you of this. All right?
Yeah, here's the thing.
Figured this out."
Yeah.
Yeah, and he says, "All right. Well, how many injections would that take?" I don't know. She says,
"I'm intrigued."
Yeah. And then this is one of the craziest cuts. She agrees to help him. We then cut to a shot of her injecting him.
Yeah.
But she says, "Well, in the month since we started doing this, there have been no attacks." and so the police are no longer suspicious about vampires. It's just like, whoa, man.
That's a cut, man.
Yeah.
That is a, yeah.
I got whiplash from that transition.
I still, it's not just that we're doing that. There are about 3 instances where it is literally with soundtrack being chopped off with background music.
Just, maybe, I don't know.
Just hitting a wall. Yeah. And you're like, what?
I actually heard the music crash into a wall. It was really bizarre.
I actually heard the record scratch.
That scene's over. Pull that out of there. Stop that music. Scene's over. It was weird at one point when you actually heard a guy just go, "I think the scene's over now."
You just hear in the background, "Moving on." One month later.
That's just how they shot the movie. And we're done. Cut.
They should just have some guy come in with like a title card that just goes 1 month later and walks off.
I mean, honestly, even a title card would have been better than just the next scene, which is like, oh, good, we're going to start the process. And so you assume this is the first injection. No, they've been at this for a month. And in that time, he hasn't killed anyone.
Yeah, apparently it's going very well.
Thank God the cops are off Barnabas's back now.
But basically, what surprises me is when he does tell her the whole thing about his, I'm going to marry Maggie, it comes as a surprise. I'm like going, at no point in these sessions where she's giving him this injection does he go, "I can't wait to be human again because I've fallen in love with that lovely young woman that looks exactly like my old." Nope. I wonder what they talk about.
They're just sitting kept telling Dr. Hoffman how hot she was. I don't know. I mean, he was really leading her on.
You've never looked sexier than when you're turning me into a mortal again.
Gets the juices flowing.
Something about a woman with a hypodermic needle.
So Barnabas has dinner with Maggie, and he's like, "I want you to have this music box." Yes. Yeah. It belonged to Gisette. And Maggie is such an ill-defined character because I can't tell. Like, shouldn't she just be like, you spent a long time talking about Gisette. Like,
yeah.
No, she's just like, "Oh, lovely."
Yeah, I mean, for the sake of the listeners who don't know, and you're trying, I'm sure, to follow along with what John's laying it all out, but it's very abrupt in the film as well.
Every scene in the movie is in my notes, and that's how choppy this film is.
But you would imagine that Maggie, who's a young woman, who had a serious boyfriend, is now being wooed by an older gentleman, and again, I know that he's not supposed to be as old as the actor really is, right. but still, how
old are we supposed to think Barnabas looks to people?
I think Barnabas probably was chained up when he was maybe 25 or 30, and it's being played by an actor
40.
Easily 48 or 49, something like that. But he's doing great.
Well, he's a good performance. It just
it doesn't look right. No, it doesn't look right. But she, instead of what you would expect of her to go, I'm flattered by this gentleman's, attentions, but no, she's just entranced by him. And he does bring up Gisette all the time. He
was 46 when this movie came out.
46, there you go. But I'll also say that that she, at this point, she doesn't know he's Barnabas Collins, the actual vampire guy.
No.
So this would be a weird dating situation across the board. None of this would feel natural to a young woman of 1970. She would just be like, I'm not sure what you're on about.
She just seems so charmed by him.
Yeah.
But then Willie...
When they walk out in the daylight, it's all about, whenever we're outside, I can't... You don't pay as much attention to me. He goes, I just... Look at how beautiful this day is, and the light through the trees and all that stuff. And she's like going, I like that. You make me like nature and shit. You make me feel so special. And you're like, I guess this is a romance?
I suppose. They don't have chemistry at all.
They don't.
But meanwhile, Willie says, you got to get away from here, Maggie. Get as far away as you can. And she's like, what are you talking about?
Stay away from Barnabas.
He's dangerous. I can't say more. Bye. Like, that's the scene. And she's just like, well, that's
starts
weird.
With V, ends with Empire.
And then she's hanging out with Barnabas. Anymore. She's hanging out with Barnabas the next day. She goes, it was really weird. Last night, Willie said I had to get away from here because I was in danger from you. And he's like, did he now? Nuts. Yeah. And then he comes home and immediately beats the ever-living shit out of Willie with his cane.
I kind of like that scene.
I did too. And Willie's just like, no, I don't know. Willie is all he said was, it rhymes
with grandpa.
It could have been anything.
It could have been anything.
But it all turns. Willie is so pathetic in this movie.
Yeah, he is.
So he beats the ever-living shit out of him, which Stokes then comes over the next day, and he's like, Willie, why won't you let me see your face? Oh, dear God, Willie. And he's all bruised up and beaten. And then Barnabas comes, he's like, what's the meaning of this, Stokes? And Stokes is just like, you're a vampire, and I know it.
It's good.
And he's just like, really, if I was a vampire, then how would I be walking during the day? And he's like,
I'll be back when I figure that out.
And he immediately pieces this together because the next scene is him bursting into Dr. Hoffman's office going like, you're helping him, aren't you? You're making him walk during the day.
And she goes, well, and he goes, he doesn't even feel for you the way you feel for him. Mm-hmm. You've fallen for him, haven't you?
What are you talking about? I'm just helping him as a doctor helping a patient. He's like, he's not a patient. He's the undead.
Ooh, so good.
Yeah. He is right about this, though, because then we see that scene you just described with Barnabas and Maggie on the walk. And what's this? Yep. Dr. Hoffman standing on the roof of Collinwood, staring down with rage in her eyes. That's my man, bitch.
Yet another love triangle in this movie.
Yeah.
With Barnabas at its center.
A peak example of why translating 1,200 episodes of a soap opera into a movie doesn't really work, because
you could have really focused the story up. You could have done this as just the introduction of Barnabas Collins from the soap opera. You could have followed that storyline and fleshed out the surrounding characters. You could have done it. They chose to condense the entire run of this whole damn soap opera.
Some of the, there's some tone questions, and we'll talk about it at some point, but I actually think the Burton movie does a better job of that.
Oh, agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. Other than the fact it's a comedy, but it includes
that's what I'm saying.
The cursing. It includes stuff. Angelique.
It does.
It includes all that stuff.
It gets all the necessary plot points of the show, and you get more of a taste of each character.
Mm-hmm.
At least a little bit. So, I think it, yeah. Anyway, Barnabas goes, well, I appreciate everything, Dr. Hoffman. How many injections do we have left? And she says 3. And that's not good enough for him. He's like, was there any way we can speed that up? I'm like, 3's not that many, Barnabas.
Let's get this going, okay? Let's get this going.
Because he goes, get this. I'm going to ask Maggie to marry me. And that's when she's like, ugh. And it is nice where he's just like, oh, Dr. Hoffman, I didn't know you had those feelings.
Yes.
It changes nothing, though. You should know that. It's like, yeah, whatever.
I am so sorry to break your heart, but you just ain't Maggie. You just ain't.
Look, I know you're a far more age-appropriate romantic partner, but
have you seen her? Ow.
Damn! I just want Barnabas to go, damn!
Damn! Which is where we get that today.
Yeah. And so then she's looking at these vials and sort of, you don't quite see what she's doing, but she's like, yes, I'm coming for the injection. And then it cuts to her hurriedly packing her bags to leave. And Barnabas walks in. He's like, there's something wrong inside me. And he looks over and sees that she's packing. And he's like, you've betrayed me. And at this point, he's turning into an old man.
Yeah, he figures out that she did some switcheroo with the cure, or she doubled the dose or something.
We don't actually know what she did because we didn't see it. So,
but we do see her eyeing the vials too and going,
yeah,
oh man, I'll switch this around. So we know that it's because of something she did.
It is, but there is a part of me that wants to know, like, well, I don't understand. If you give him the wrong vial, he gets old. Like,
apparently,
yeah, it's just like, okay, or
he goes back to being not only full vampire, he is aged a lot.
And I gotta say, he looks pretty cool this way. Like, he looks like a creepy vampire.
This look that I've seen pictures of Barnabas Collins in this makeup, and again, Famous Monsters magazine and things like that when I was growing up, and I was like, oh, they cast an old dude when I would see those pictures, and then I actually see them film, and I go, this is really well done makeup. It really is.
And old age makeup is often the shittiest makeup in movies. It's so hard to do. And here he's
bald with just like the sprigs of hair, and he's very old, and the hands look good, and he's spotty. It's good stuff.
I like it.
Yeah.
I was like, ooh, this is kind of creepy.
Yeah. And then I said, how can I get me some of that? And once I get it, I think I know what my new look is going to be.
Yeah. Ladies.
Hello, ladies. It's your old friend Brendan here.
So he strangles Dr. Hoffman to death, though, as a point.
Yep.
Because we're just knocking off characters in the show left and right. Then Maggie enters and is like, Barnabas, what are you doing? And he just bites her. I'm just like, wow, okay. Well, this really went south for old Barnabas fast.
Yeah.
And now we have Jeff. Jeff, who's barely been in the movie, but from here on will be the hero of the film.
With a little bit of last-minute heel turn by Willie.
Yeah. Yes. Oh my God. Well, yeah. Okay, we'll get there. And Jeff,
a very undeserved hero moment.
Jeff sits by Maggie's side. He's like, "Oh no, I never should have left you here." Or was I never should have gone away, because that was the whole thing, is he went away so that Barnabas could seduce her. And he's like, I never should have gone away. That was a mistake. And then Stokes is like, well, here's the situation. Barnabas is a vampire. Like I've been saying. We gotta kill him.
Justification feels so good.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, isn't this where he says, so meet me tonight at Blibbity Blobbity?
He does. Well, first they're talking about.
No, he says Blibbity Blobbity. Don't correct me.
He says Blibbity Blobbity. This is where Roger has, well, the history of this. He must really be the Barnabas Collins. And earlier he did indicate that she looks an awful lot like his fiancée Josette. So he must be under the impression that and they were just like, yes, we've already put this together, but thank you, characters. Now you know. And then
thank you for explaining it to the audience.
He says, meet me later tonight because we have to act soon, because it is the anniversary of the death of Josette. And as Stokes says, tonight, Barnabas intends to take a bride.
Great.
Yeah, very vampire-y.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, they have... This is my favorite scene in the movie, is they have covered Maggie's room in crosses and garlic. And for a needless amount of time, we see this uniformed cop, like, he knocks on one of the crosses, he's looking at the garlic, and he's just going like, yep, everything is sealed up pretty well here, yeah, no vampires. No vampires. He's saying nothing, by the way, but I was watching it and just giving him these thoughts because he's just going like, yeah, no vampires coming tonight. Nothing's
better than the local sheriff.
Time to sit in this easy chair here and read my paperback, which we watched for a little while. Only to have Barnabas sneak out of a secret door and kill this guy.
Yep.
Just like, again, nobody thought maybe we should do something about that secret door.
But this is another thing in where, and I like this in vampire movies. We've seen it in Hammer as well. Is that Barnabas looks at Maggie and she's entranced.
Yeah.
And she takes the cross off her own.
Yeah.
Self.
Well, because he's approaching, she's like, reaching out to him.
Yeah, and he's like, get rid of that thing, and she's like, it ain't no biggie. Takes it off. So he's got her.
And he bites her and he turns young again here. Mm-hmm. And then Jeff comes back into the room to find the dead cop, a bloody pillow, and no Maggie. And he's like, God damn it.
Oh, ain't that always the way?
Cut to the sheriff is organizing a search party, and I do love him with his big box of silver bullets, just handing out handfuls of bullets to people.
The fact that these local cops have just, without us watching it, have just come to I guess it's one of these vampire cases. Oh, I'm glad we had these made. Yeah. Because he's just handing out handfuls of silver bullets.
There you go. It's not boxes. It's just one big crate of bullets, and he's just handing out loose handfuls of bullets to people.
And I like the fact that he's doing this while he's talking about it, and we're going to cover this area, we're going to do this. And he's not until the very end when he's given some to one of the handsome hero guys. He goes, silver bullets.
Yeah. He goes, it'll kill him, but only if you hit him exactly in the heart, which I do love. Oh, no, I was going to say it isn't important, but it is because he kills Stokes that way. He does not kill Barnabas with a silver bullet, but he does kill Stokes.
Oh, my God, it's so stupid.
It's really stupid. So anyway, Jeff goes out to meet Stokes. He takes a boat out to the other island. I'm confused about the geography of
yeah, I don't know. It's some
because it seemed like it was a house and then a house next to it. Now all of a sudden Barnabas is out on like an island.
Maybe the old house is on a.
I don't know.
I don't know either.
I just wish we got more of, once again, Collinwood PD.
That is all I want.
That's the 70s cop show theme I gave it there. Just it's a little sting.
Again, don't give me these ideas. You know I will write it.
Yeah, I know, but I kind of want Collinwood PD to exist now. Obviously, we don't have the rights to Dark Shadows, but
I wonder who does now. Actually, Dan Curtis is gone.
I mean,
R.I.P.
Warner Brothers made the movie. I don't know if that means Warner Brothers has the right to the show, but
they may just have the rights to the film rights.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
But I'm not going to worry about it. Moving on.
He meets up with Stokes, and Stokes is like, oh, sorry for you to have wasted that trip out here. I've already cleared the island, and yep, no Barnabas here. So anyway, we should get back in this boat and head out. And then in classic vampire fashion, with no chill whatsoever, he tries to bite him.
This is so weird. It's just
why not get him in the boat? Or whatever. He's just like, ah.
But it's supposed to be like a big reveal.
Holy shit. Stokes is a vampire now.
Yeah. I wasn't stunned by it.
No, but of course it's like we didn't even see Stokes go out to this place.
No, that's true.
It's just like, oh shit, okay, he's a vampire now. And then they get into a tussle, and then eventually Jeff guns him down, and it is bloody, man.
Yeah.
And Jeff's got blood all over him, and he's just firing away. He empties his gun into Stokes.
Right into his chest.
Yeah, and blood's exploding off him, and it's hitting Jeff, and I was like...
This was your favorite part of the movie, I know.
It might have been, actually. I really did like it.
And you were sitting there going, what type of gun is that? You know, that wouldn't do that type of gun. It wouldn't have that kind of firepower.
No, it looked like a 357 to me. It's a pretty standard like police sidearm. It did all right. This is not the action shelf where I often have problems with how guns are used in movies because I'm such a gun nut.
I know you are. We've had this talk many times, and it's
weird
very
amount
disturbing.
about guns. It's weird. So he guns him down. Then he finds Roger, who's just bitten and like in a chair.
Yeah.
So
there goes Roger, another long-standing cast member of the show,
who had
just
nothing to do
dead
in the movie anyway. He's dead. But of course, in classic idiot fashion, Jeff's like, I better lean in real close to him.
Yeah.
Make sure he's dead.
He opens his mouth. There are fangs.
Yeah. But Jeff is able to stake him. So that's good. Jeff, meanwhile, luckily finds a crossbow somewhere in here. I guess maybe Roger had that with him or something.
No, I think it's old clutter. I at least appreciated that.
What do I need this crossbow for? Click.
For a minute or two, he's just digging around in rubble to see what he could find. He finds a stick. He's like, no, that's too weak.
Yeah,
he's looking for
I think that's
like
fine, but he really lucked out with a full-on crossbow.
A full-on crossbow
affixed with a bolt with a silver point on it.
The thing I can't believe is these bolts, because he ends up with two of them, and
they're essentially stakes.
Well, the thing is, I don't know a lot about crossbows, but
I take over once they're firearms. Crossbows aren't
these bolts look like they are spear tips. Like they're really huge.
They're badass, man. I love this as a vampire hunter weapon.
Sure, but a crossbow, generally, the bolts are usually the size of like an arrow, maybe slightly thicker for the older ones, but these things are they're like model rockets.
I know. I wanted Hugh Jackman to walk in as Van Helsing and go, that's where I left that.
Yeah, it's like, oops, sorry, I'm going to need that back.
Yeah, because that's what we're dealing with here. It basically is like a crafted weapon specifically designed to murder vampires.
Just laying around, and he's like, great.
Jeff is sneaking about, and we get to the dark wedding of Barnabas Collins, who's now just a full-on supervillain, irredeemable.
Yep.
And Jeff sneaks in, and he lines up his shot with the crossbow and fires. And then what's this? No! Willie dives in front of Barnabas.
Oh, weird. This is weird.
He takes it in slow motion. We see this thing hit him in the back, and he's like, ah!
Yeah, he jumps in front of that bolt, and you're like, where did that even come from for that character?
Yeah, not Barnabas!
I mean, I know he's been the thrall, but still.
It seemed like he was on an arc to turn against him, which he will, but after doing this, that's pretty wild.
Yeah, exactly. And essentially, we think he's dead here. He's not quite dead.
Not just yet. But Barnabas then uses his hypnosis powers to pull Jeff towards him. And he does get a bad guy line here where he goes, every wedding needs a witness.
Oh.
Yeah. But just as he turns back to start the evil wedding ceremony, what's this? Willie has pulled the spear bolt out of his back.
Yeah.
And stabs it into Barnabas. I don't know what happened in the interim of giving up his life to save him and now murdering him that has made this happen. I don't fully...
None of us do. But I will say, good effects on the shove, and it's well acted of the shoving of this thing through Barnabas. It's like it's not like a quick cut and suddenly there's something sticking out of him. There's like, I'm forcing it, well, and then you see the come out the front.
Then Jeff comes in and finishes it all the way through him. And,
it's good.
It is good stuff. And Barnabas is dead, and Jeff picks up Maggie, and he's like, let's get out of here. Yeah. And then the movie's over.
Well, or is it?
Oh, because of the bat at the end?
Yes. Yeah. Basically, the credits roll over Barnabas's dead corpse, which doesn't turn into a skeleton or anything, just laying there. Nope. And it plays for a bit, and then there's the stupidest fade with fog machine. Fog comes in, And then the fade is Barnabas's body isn't there, and a very fake bat comes flying right at us. The end.
Yeah.
He's coming back.
Except he's not.
Except for he never did.
No, he didn't.
Other than that, he totally came back.
That's House of Dark Shadows. I don't recommend this movie. What I recommend is find yourself a list of like the most important episodes of Dark Shadows to watch.
Right. I would never recommend anyone go back and watch Dark Shadows.
There's too much of it. But find like a curated list, they're online, of the must-see episodes of Dark Shadows. Yeah. And you'll have basically watched this movie, but it will be better and it will have more depth to it.
It'll have more depth and it will also be much cheesier. Yeah. I do love Dark Shadows, but this goes for every soap opera of the day. It was shot on video. It was shot quickly, so they left in mistakes. You see actors forgetting their lines, including Jonathan Frid.
Yeah.
And it's fine. I mean, because it's its own thing.
But that charm is lost when they're trying to sincerely like do it in a gritty fashion in this movie.
Yeah. I mean,
you start
Barnabas
to be like,
Collins,
this is kind of stupid.
Barnabas Collins as a character and as a backstory is actually pretty good. You could do it seriously. But yeah, it worked best as that soap opera, and I enjoyed it as a kid.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
Because it was every day I got to watch a vampire story every day.
Same here. I watched it. It was on in the morning, so I watched it before I went to school on the Sci-Fi Channel.
Nice.
That's how I watched it, and I loved it. It was great. Because
we're in agreement. There's no reason to watch this.
There really isn't. Like I said, if you're a fan of the show, I don't think you'll gain anything from this, and if you're not, then this will make no sense.
No.
So it's a movie for no one. Well,
that sounds so sad.
Yeah, it does.
Dan Curtis will be giving us better things.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, giving us
and
amazing
things I have no idea what. I mean, we're in for some that I have never watched. So
yeah. Well, it's not.
What's next week?
It's not Dan Curtis next week, but it is another vampire film next week. We have next week 1970s Count Yorga Vampire. Robert
Quarry as Count Yorga.
Yeah. I do love it's Count Yorga Vampire. It's his business card. Count Yorga Vampire. Vampire for hire.
Vampire for Hire. Another good TV show, which we have just created. He's
only a vampire when people pay him to be.
The Yorga movies, because there are two, I often get mixed up in my head, but I have seen them both. Not for many a year.
I think I've seen maybe one of them, and I don't remember which one is how I feel.
I think the thing I remember most is he wears a cool crushed velvet, like, evening jacket. And like frilly sleeves, very 1970s frilly sleeves, a little bit like John Pertwee's Doctor, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
But anyway, so looking forward to that.
Yeah.
And yeah, this will be another classic vampire, but not Dracula.
Right. Yeah. We get some different vampires in the mix here. We're still gonna have plenty of Dracula on this season.
And lots of Frankenstein's monster.
Lots of Frankenstein's monster. And that one they're pretty set on.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But we're also going to get a smattering of random werewolves, too.
Yeah. The one thing that's a little sad to me is that even though I'm excited, we keep bouncing different directors and so forth, different takes, is that no one really, except for, say, a Yorga and things like that, they're all doing the books. And I love an adaptation, but we're going to see many versions of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein in the next few weeks, and many versions of Bram Stoker's Dracula, instead of, well, here's what happened later, which I usually appreciate because those are original stories.
Yeah, they weren't really doing that then. It's just more adaptations, as you said.
It's just like, hey, I'm Dan Curtis, and this is my take on Dracula.
Well, in fact, they're all called like Dan Curtis's Dracula, Dan Curtis's Frankenstein. You're like, great. I can't wait to see what Dan Curtis does.
But I'm all about getting to Night Stalker. But yeah,
we're not that far out from that. Next is Count Yorga Vampire.
All right.
Yeah,
Stay tuned.
For that, please. But in the meantime, that's going to do it for this week's episode of Campbell and Jones Meet the Monsters. I'm John Campbell.
I'm Brendan Jones.
And remember, there are such things as monsters.